Hello, I want to welcome you to a discussion on urban community. This is a continuation of a discussion on urban sociology. In this particular discussion, we want to focus on three principal areas, namely the meaning of urban community, the characteristics of urban community, and the general lifestyles of urban community. Welcome to the discussion. Let us commence our discussion with an understanding of what an urban community is. An urban community can be defined in many ways. However, the most common understanding of urban community is that it is a group of people that have a certain minimum population or members and possess certain specialized economic, political, and social structures, of course, with some recognizable characteristics. So that when we talk about an urban community, we mean a group of people whose general lifestyles differ significantly with their counterparts in other areas that are not classified as urban areas. This distinction is based on the kind of economic activities, the political organization, and the various social structures that are available at their level, and which in many ways are completely different from what we find with other communities, notably rural communities. Indeed, other definitions are there, and therefore, this is merely a guiding definition. Students are free to look for other meaning or other definitions of urban community, and that would make it even better for them because it will help them now have a variety of definitions as to what an urban community is. There are a number of characteristics that we find with urban community that ordinarily we don't find other forms of other forms of human organizations, such as the rural community. So I want us to pay our attention to the characteristics of urban community. One is to do with the issue around social solidarity. What do we mean by solidarity? By solidarity, we mean members' awareness of what they share in terms of interests, objectives, standards, and even sympathies, which help them to create a psychological sense of unity of groups or classes. Solidarity emphasizes the interdependence between individuals in a society, which allows them to feel that they can enhance the lives of each other. The social relations among members of urban community are numerous. They're indirect, they are formal, and impersonal, and this makes interactions among members of urban community shallow, contractual, expedient, specialized, loose, and also temporary. This is because the kind of activities members of one community engage in, or the kind of social structures that we find in urban communities, may not permit strong social solidarity. And it is for this reason that we find that majority of members of urban community do not interact in a more informal manner. Their interaction is largely impersonal, it is short-lived, and also shallow. It is not deep. It is contractual in the sense that people engage for a particular transaction. Once that transaction is over, they disengage. And that's why the level of social bonds that exist between one member of urban community and the other is not strong, is not solid, and it's not enduring. That is completely different from what we find with members of the rural community. Another characteristic of urban community which makes them differ significantly with the rural community is on the issue of cultural ideology. There are broadly two types of cultural ideology, namely individualism and collectivism. Collectivism is a cultural ideology in which group norms or group interests outweigh individual interests. And therefore, everything that society does is in furtherance of group interests. Individualism, on the other hand, is a cultural ideology that stresses individual goals and rights over groups. With the two forms of ideologies, we find that urban communities is largely characterized by individualism. That is, the right of individuals takes precedence over that of groups, so that people in urban areas are motivated more by what individuals can achieve, or what we call individual achievements, rewards, and benefits, and of course, personal goals. Consequently, the needs of individuals are elevated over and above those of the group, and behaviors in urban community is dictated more by the attitudes and preferences of individuals. Interdependence, which is highly emphasized within the domain of collectivism, is largely missing, or if it is present, it is not emphasized at all, and indeed, it is discouraged. Therefore, people perceive interdependence in urban areas as a shameful act or an embarrassing act, since it is not in any way promoted as a value that members of the community need to embrace. This is because individualism discourages interdependence. It encourages autonomy and also the pursuit of personal goals. So individuals strive to depend on themselves and not on the group. Urban communities are also examined within the context of social control. Social control basically refers to the ways in which societies try to prevent and sanction behavior that go against societal expectations. Human behavior in urban areas is achieved or is shaped through formal, centralized systems. These include the police, the courts, the schooling system, and even propaganda. The behavior, therefore, of members of urban community is not regulated or shaped by societal norms, but rather by conventional institutions. If somebody makes a mistake, depending on the severity or the strength of the mistake, the person can either be taken to the police, taken to court, or other systems that have been devised in society which use modern laws are used in attempt to punish or shape the behaviors of such individuals. This is unlike what we find in many cases in rural areas, where the traditions, cultural beliefs, and practices of societies or communities are used in directing behavior. This does not mean that all human behavior in rural areas are strictly shaped or directed by informal means. Indeed, there are cases where repeated violations of societal norms might lead to the application or invocation of conventional systems, such as one being arrested, taken to the police, and arraigned in court, and then appropriate sanctions are provided by the court upon conviction or acquittal. In that case, therefore, we do not necessarily insist that all cases of social control in rural areas are shaped by societal norms, but majority are shaped by societal norms, and societal norms, or what we call traditional systems of social control, is given priority where it cannot adequately address certain violations. That's now when conventional institutions now come in. Another marked difference that we find between urban and other communities, such as rural communities, is with regard to the status of women. That is, women in urban areas appear to be more empowered, and empowerment simply refers to the degree of autonomy and self-determination in people. When we compare urban and rural women, we find that urban women are more empowered. This empowerment comes with regard in terms of better level of education, increased participation in wage labor, which makes them better placed to access basic needs and acquire property and access other services that enhance their quality of life. Therefore, compared with rural women, urban women are more empowered because they have better income, they have better education, they have access to property, they also have access to credit, and can also, in an easier way, access other means of production that are necessary in terms of advancing human conditions. This makes them fairly better placed to participate in leadership positions, whether at corporate or political level. So the status of women in urban areas is more enhanced compared to what we find in rural areas. And that makes it that brings a very clear distinction between women in urban areas vis-a-vis that of the rural communities. Having looked at the various characteristics that distinguish urban communities from those of rural communities, I want us now to turn our attention to the lifestyles of urban community. Lifestyles of urban community can be grouped into 5, one of which is the category that we call Cosmopolites. Cosmopolites is basically a category of a lifestyle among members of urban community whereby these people, they live in the city or in town because the town offers them cultural attraction, restaurants, and other features that makes life a little bit more exciting for them than what they would have found in rural areas. The cosmopolites, therefore, are attracted to the city because of its culture, the entertainment, and excitements that we find in cities. They also tend to have better financial resources, which of course allow them to take full control of the advantage of the diverse attractions that are available in the city. They include students, writers, musicians, professionals, and even intellectuals. All these people, they belong to the broader urban population or urban lifestyles that we call the cosmopolites. They are actually the cream of the urban community. They have economic muscles, that's the financial muscles. They have a lot of networks, and therefore they can access a lot of services with ease that are readily available in the city. The other group is called the unmarried or the childless. These people work in the city and enjoy the attraction of cultural events that are synonymous with contemporary urban areas. They live in the city, not very far from their place of work, and they also enjoy the various entertainment that are found in most of the cities. If and when they marry or decide to have children, they may migrate to the suburbs to raise their families. That is, they may leave the inner core of the city to establish their settlements slightly outside urban areas, rather slightly outside the CBD. Some of these people, they move to the suburbs if they decide to have children, but others spend their entire lives in the city. Sometimes, when they grow old and they find the city no longer exciting, they may migrate to spend their retirement or old age life in rural areas. We call them the unmarried or the childless. They are often found in every place where modern entertainments are found. Anytime we have maybe music shows, either presided by local or foreign artists, it is highly possible that they'll form a significant part of the crowd that's attending such gatherings. When we have sports activities going on, such as rugby, soccer, it is quite often to find them being among those attending such important sporting events in the cities, because that is what makes them happy, and that is why they find themselves completely embedded and reluctant to leave the cities because of the company of friends and also the presence of entertainment activities and what they call easy life. The other group of urban dwellers is called the ethnic villagers. Who are the ethnic villagers? These are recent immigrants and members of various ethnic groups who live within or close to each other. These neighborhoods tend to have strong social bonds and are more generally, there's a stronger sense of community. Life among these people is because of the fact that they trace their cultural origin from one community. So that if you visit some of the urban areas, you will find certain estates adopting names of rural areas where they have migrated where they have migrated from. So that if you visit a place like Nairobi, you will find names such as Kisumundogo. Kisumundogo, basically, the version means the smaller Kisumu. Where is the real and the actual Kisumu? The real and the actual Kisumu is in Kisumu town and its surroundings. So if you are to visit Kisumundogo in Nairobi, it is possible that majority or almost everyone that you will find that particular estate will be people from the Luo community, because of the fact that sometimes some urban dwellers prefer to live in estates that are already occupied by members of the community. Because of this, we find that among the ethnic villagers, they exhibit significant characteristics of lifestyles that we find among the rural communities, such as strong bonds, such as collectivism instead of individualism as the driver of their cultural ideologies. Interaction is personal and not impersonal, and in many cases, they are likely to employ informal means as a way of resolving conflicts or resolving or directing behavior. It is only when mistakes that have occurred cannot be adequately addressed by informal structures that is when they turn to conventional institutions such as the police. They are tightly knit societies, and there is an element of interdependence. This is because they believe that their strength and survival depends largely on the ability to interact and the ability to help each other. The other category of urban community is called the deprived. The deprived are people with low levels of formal education, and they live in very poor neighborhoods of urban areas. Many times they don't have jobs, or if at all they have jobs, they work in works or jobs that are extremely low paying. They live in neighborhoods that are filled with trash, broken windows, and other signs of disorder, and they're also predisposed to high rates of crime. That is, they are either perpetrators or victims of this crime. They basically live in disadvantaged or conditions or places that are generally unfavorable, and because of poverty, they also develop a lot of mental or physical disability, race, or ethnicity. They find themselves in highly disadvantaged areas. The deprived, they live in the city because the city provides for them low-skilled jobs and relatively low rents, and also in some cases public assistance programs. So the deprived basically are the poor, the poorest of the citizens or members of the urban community. So that in terms of social ranking, they rank significantly lower than other groups that we have just discussed. The other type and the last type of urban lifestyle or urban community is called the trapped. The trapped are residents who, given their name or the implication of their name, is that they would wish to leave urban areas, but it's not possible because of several reasons. They may be alcoholics, they may be drug addicts, they may be elderly, they may be disabled, or they may be jobless. And therefore, given their psychosocial and economic conditions, they cannot afford to move to better areas. So they find themselves completely trapped because of their circumstances. The trapped, therefore, they stay in the city because they cannot afford to leave the city. The means, the financial resources that are required to leave the city, the level of mental uprightness that is required to leave the city or to think of a better place, they completely lack it. And they are often the elderly who are living on fixed incomes and also remain in the same neighborhood for many years. If we observe, most of the times in our urban areas, we'll find some elderly people, fairly elderly in their 80s, some are even in their 90s, that are employed as guards in some of the factories or business enterprises in the cities. They are fairly old, and sometimes we wonder why they are still in town. They are part of the group that we call the trapped. They cannot in any way find it meaningful to live the city because the city provides them with opportunity to live. Not opportunity in terms of better life, but opportunity to survive, and therefore they fear that leaving the city to another environment may not augur well for them because they doubt whether other environments can accept, can accommodate to them, and therefore can offer them life chances. So they would rather remain in the city as long as it is possible for them. And at that point, we come to the end of this discussion. I want to thank you so much for listening. Take note of anything that you find not adequate so that you can raise it at appropriate time for more detailed discussion. Thank you for your time.